Thank you, Madden, for bringing us all together today for this really important day. It's an important day for Page for several reasons. One, as Madden has explained, this is the first time we brought together the CCOs across India for a series of dialogues, and we are honored to be a part of that. But it's also really important to us because what we're going to be talking to you about today is the work that we've been doing for the past year on the change that we're seeing in the world, the changes and challenges that we're seeing to our profession, and our beginnings of an idea of what we think we can do to respond to those challenges. But we have a great team of people to spend time with you today. Peter Deversini, as Madden mentioned, is International Vice President for Page. He's at the forefront of the globalization effort because Page, as you know, is a US-based organization, but our aspiration is to be truly global, and Peter is at the forefront of that. He's an experienced CCO from Allstate, a number of years in consulting, including Gagg & McDonald, the firm that you just mentioned, and one of the distinguished leaders in our profession. He's been a member of Page for a long time, a member of the board, and a recipient of our Distinguished Service Award. Mr.Roger is a member of my team. He's the vice president in charge of the thought leadership, and he's the CCO of Page, and he's also in charge of our thought leadership. So all the work that we're rolling out today, Elliot's been responsible for really helping us pull up all that together, and I'm so grateful Elliot could be able to travel with us to India today to help us learn from you as we modify and adjust our thinking. Chris Montero is a very long-standing member of Page, who's been one of the leading CCOs in America with a long stint at MasterCard and more recently at KPMG. You're going to hear from him later today about his experience at MasterCard in terms of being at the forefront of the digital transformation that we're all facing and some of the work that he did. And Wendy Strong, our colleague from USAA, she's a Canadian transplanted to San Antonio, Texas, who served as a member of our board for many years, led our thought leadership in an earlier iteration as we were getting some of our earlier work ready. And the work that she did at USAA, which she will share with you, is probably the single best example of a company taking the Page model, which I'll describe to you in a moment, and bringing it to life, and she's going to talk to you about that. So it's a great team, and we're just really honored to be with you today, and again, looking forward to hearing what you have to say. As Madden mentioned, Page is a global membership organization for corporate chief communication officers. It's not a corporate membership. You're invited as an individual to become a member of Page, and I'm glad to see several of our Page colleagues here. By invitation only, you have to be nominated by another member and approved by the board. We have many of the greatest companies in the world, the CCOs. This is just a small sample. We have 800 members around the world. We also have, as Madden mentioned, CEOs of leading agencies. We have some educators from leading universities and a couple of other small categories like search consultants who actually bring in very important insights into what CEOs are asking for and looking for. Our mission is all about the Chief Communication Officer. We're all about trying to make sure that the CCO is a senior strategic leader in the enterprise, not just a functionary head of a function that's doing some kind of communication when other people get in trouble. It's all about senior strategic leadership. And we believe by bringing us together and strengthening each other, that the CCO is better positioned to be able to make the enterprise more responsible to stakeholders, and business, therefore, is more likely to make positive contributions to society. We are grounded in the Page principles, which are derived from the lifetime work of Arthur W. Page, who was the CCO. They didn't call it that then. CCO is just a generic term anyway. Of AT&T from 1927 to 1946, and we take these very seriously. Tell the truth. The whole truth, always, and prove it with action. Mr. Page said, public relations is 90% what you do and only 10% talking about it. And you'll see in the Page model, we take this very seriously. Our membership has grown to about 800. You can see near doubling over the past 5 or 6 years, but very, very rapid growth outside the United States. Much of that driven in Asia. You can see that the rate of growth in Asia is even higher than in Europe and other parts of the world. And so it's really, really important to us to continue to expand our membership in Asia, because our members in the US want a global cohort of peers that they can learn from. That's what Page is all about. Over the past decade plus, we've been thinking about the challenges facing our companies and the world and how we can respond to them, beginning in 2007 with our first report called The Authentic Enterprise. You may recall the iPhone was introduced in 2007, so it's almost prehistory in terms of social media, but we saw coming a revolution in the way people connected with each other and communicated with each other around the world, leading to an imperative that enterprises must, if they want to be trusted, truly be authentically themselves. They need to understand who they want to be and actually be that in order to be trusted. It goes to the heart of what Mr. Page said. 90% is what you do and only 10% talking about it. It took us about 5 years after we kind of had that initial idea to really think through how does one do that. We began to see our colleagues changing the way they worked and thinking differently about what is the role of CCO. And we began to kind of experiment with an hypothesis which we rolled out in 2012 called the Page model. We thought at that time that the Page model would be sort of version 1.0 and we'll continue to evolve it, and we'll have a 2.0 and probably by now a 3.0. Actually, what we found is that the Page model really holds together well. And I hope you'll agree when you begin to kind of play with it today that it has some merit. The new work that we'll be describing today builds on the Page model and thinks about how it works in the context of today. Here's the model. And you can see by the graphic that it's two parts. It starts with corporate character. This is the who we are part. It's the what we do part. Mission, purpose, values, culture, business model, strategy, brand, policy, and positions, all defined and aligned to make a coherent whole. It has to be authentically engaged. You can't have a purpose that says, you know, we're very public spirit oriented and a business model that's just about making money, right? It's all got to be authentically defined and aligned so it makes sense. And then the easy part, get everybody to understand and do it, right? That's the hard part. And we say that this is job one of the CCO. Now you might say, well, hang on a second. How does the CCO own and manage all this? Well, you don't own it and you don't manage all of it, but it's your job, we believe. It's the unique differentiating identity of the enterprise, who we are, how we act, and it has to be implemented in such a way that everybody understands it and acts according to it in everything they do. Then and only then can you begin to build the stakeholder engagement around it, starting with shared belief. We stand for this. You say you disagree with us, but we have an area of shared belief. We actually believe that an enterprise should do this. You think we're not doing it the right way. Well, let's have a conversation. The conversation leads to, you hope, some kind of an agreement and an action that's helpful by the product, by the stock, support the policy objective, enter into a partnership, whatever it may be. And if it's not just a one-off transaction, it becomes a relationship where confidence is built over time that yes, this is working for both of us. And if it goes really well, the stakeholder becomes an advocate, which is not the end of the circle, it goes back around. The advocacy leads to more shared belief and more of the actions is what you're trying to get, right? It's making the world better through the work. So that's the model. And as I said, we believe that the model still holds true. The work that we're doing now said, okay, the model still holds true, but the world's changing rapidly. What are those changes? So we've spent most of the past year, Peter and I, Johnny Water from IBM, and Amor Hines of Tex 100, who is our current chair, have spent most of the last year traveling, talking to over 100 Page members, asking, what are you seeing, what are you doing, what's working, what's different, and how can we be better at elevating the strategic management role of the CCO. You know better than I do that India's growth is now outpacing China's growth, but coming off a very, very low base. So it's going to be a long time to catch up. But think of the potential. I know you do every day. Think about the potential. You know much better than I do. If you look at GDP on a purchasing power parity base, the United States is already the second largest economy in the world, and India is already the third. And so at the rate of growth that's changing, this is changing the dynamics for all of us, right? This is the world in which we live. The China phenomenon is fascinating and challenging, and brings the potential for major change in the way the world works. We always thought in the United States and Western Europe that as China becomes more capitalistic, it will ultimately become a democracy. Not so fast, right? It's a different business model, which has major challenges, and the United States is fighting back on state-sponsored and theft may be the wrong word, but appropriation of intellectual property, let's say it that way. So the world trade situation is changing very rapidly. China has great ambitions, and this has implications for all of us that we're thinking about. There are serious challenges for the international economic institutions that became the basis for a rules-based, fair way for everybody in the world to have opportunity. We've seen in the last few years, surprisingly, that the pace of global trade is slowing down. The pace of increase in global trade is slowing down, which has implications for all of us. I'm not sure that Martin Wolf is right. Martin said this at the Page annual conference in London a couple of years ago, but there are certainly major challenges to these institutions, and we all have a stake in preserving their strength and ability to have a fair playing field for everybody around the world. In the westernized democracies, there are serious implications of all this change. A lot of backlash in terms of Made in America, the other pictures from the UK, stagnating incomes for lower and middle classes in the US, while the income disparities are widening. The map of the United States with the colors on it is showing the incidence of opioid addiction in communities where people have lost their purpose, they've lost their job, they've lost a sense of self, and they're relying on drugs to kind of get through the day. It's a very challenging situation. At the same time, significant demographic change, a new generation coming on. It's interestingly, the millennials are becoming the majority within the workforce and majority in the world population. Gen Z is coming right along behind with a more pragmatic and sort of having grown up through the Great Recession, a little more willingness to, a little less entitlement and a little more willingness to really work hard. Aging populations in the westernized democracies, very young populations in much of the rest of the world, creating all kinds of other challenges. Now with disruptive business models, we get to kind of the heart of what's driving transformation in the business sector. We all know how technology is impacting all of our businesses and new business models, entrepreneurs coming along with new ideas that are constantly challenging and changing consumer tastes and important issues like climate change that are challenging all of us as well. Almost every enterprise that we talk to around the world over the last year is seeing massive disruptive forces, causing them to have to rethink, and we know that not all of them will survive. CEOs are working very, very hard at how we can adjust to these changes. Who are we? What do we believe? What value do we have? What is our business model? How can we change? How can we get ahead of it? Maybe we have to self-disrupt before someone else disrupts us, because if we don't, we won't survive. Finally, rising stakeholder activism, employees getting more and more determined to work for companies that create change in the world, and even investors around the world expecting companies to drive social value. Where does that leave us? For companies around the world, clearly an existential moment. Everyone we talked to, when we said, is this what you're experiencing? They said yes. CEOs are looking for help in changing their organizations, and sometimes they don't know where to turn. They're creating a chief transformation officer, a chief experience officer, a chief this, a chief that. What about the CCO? Well, they're supposed to help us, but that's not where I would turn first. What if we became the center of where they turn first? What if we became part of the answer here in helping, using the model to think about who are we? What do we do? What's our business model? What's our strategy? What's our purpose? Why do we exist? How can we be at the center of helping the CEO change? The societal issues and intensifying force, I mentioned that, and I'm not even going to go into weaponization of information because Elliot and Chris are going to take you through this later in the afternoon. And in the stakeholder engagement part of the model, to use digital tools to do a better job of engaging with stakeholders. That lines up with the model. Build corporate character. Remember, mission, purpose, values, culture, business model, strategy, and brand, all defined and aligned to make the unique differentiating identity of the enterprise. Built on a platform of mission, purpose, and values. Who are we? Why do we exist? What do we believe? The big three, brand, culture, and social value, are ways in for the CCO to become a partner with the CEO and across the C-suite in building this redefinition. In order to be successful at that, one must have a set of skills. One must understand the business. One must understand the socioeconomic environment in which we're operating. One must be able to think critically and strategically about all of those things and be a partner with the business, not just on the comms piece, but on the business issues. One must have the guts to speak up and go against the groupthink that enterprises find themselves in and be the voice from outside that says, look, you're missing something, or what about this, or if we do that, here's how it'll be seen. So we have an opportunity, but it's not always easy to speak up in the face of that. And I know that woo is a verb, which means to try to win support from someone. I'm using it here as a noun, so you've got to have a clue, you've got to have guts, and you've got to have woo. Woo means EQ, or emotional intelligence, the ability to build allies across the C-suite. If the CEO is not listening, what about my partner who's the CMO or the CHRO? Maybe we can together get some of our business leaders to, it's that kind of ability to work within the enterprise. In the face of weaponized information, how can we build content practices that are worthy of trust, that are not suspect in terms of their validity, that are not misinformation or disinformation? How can we engage and shape the digital future so that it's more reliable and truth will prevail? And how can we use ComTech, which is our way of saying MarTech, which the marketing function has developed, can be applied, many of you are in the marketing arena, can be applied in the comms area into more effect to build sort of really authentic digital engagement with stakeholders. And that's the piece that Chris and Elliot will take us through later.